with Mariah Ehlert. She's a certified neurosculpting facilitator. I think I said it right. I can never pronounce this.
Good job.
Spell it.
Good job.
She's going to tell us all about how our brains are affecting our business. And I can tell for sure my brain definitely affecting my business back in the day and even now. So it's subtle things that you do to kind of ruin things for your business. I would spend, when I was a photographer, I would actually spend like hours just figuring out what font to use on my website. It's just so silly, one of these things that, you know, it doesn't matter that much, but it's preventing me from doing actual work. So, Mariah, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and what the heck neurosculpting is.
Well, I can totally relate to those procrastination forms as well. And they're kind of, those are different ways that fear shows up in our lives. And I'll get into more of that. But neurosculpting basically is it's using brain science and how our brains work and how we learn to kind of rewire things and manage stress better. And then also the flip side of it is that we're able to access more of our potential. We're able to access that part of our brain that is the creative thinker, the problem solver, the big picture goal setting part of our brain. So once we're able to calm down those fears, we have much more access to that higher brain. And that's kind of what neurosculpting does. It's the primary modality that I'm certified in.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean, us as entrepreneurs, we're putting our pretty much lives out there. So when we say something, hey, I want a client, obviously much better worded, it's scary if we don't hear anything back, because then we feel we fail, right?
Oh, totally. There's so much uncertainty and so many ups and downs in being an entrepreneur. And, you know, we joke about, well, back when my other business, when I did this, I had these sort of procrastination and these sort of fears, but it's real. Like every single time we put ourselves out there and we do something new and we're trying something new, for me, I guarantee the next day, within 1 to 2 days, I have it timed now. That's how in tuned I've become with my brain, that self-doubt's going to knock on my door.
Oh, wow.
So like I prepare, I can prepare for it. So when it shows up, I know, I know not to make any big decisions, when I'm in that space. And I know that it's going to go away, that if I just keep focusing on, what is my why? Why am I really doing this? What is the real reason behind this? And then I have that security to kind of fall back on.
That's wonderful. So you can just prepare and push it away. Tell us
at least notice it.
Tell us in the comments if you've ever experienced any type of blocks, or if you notice that your brain is ruining your business. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to give you the floor, Mariah. You have a training prepared for us.
I do. I will pull it up now. Let me get my screen up. I feel like everything needs sound effects. Just makes it more fun. All right. Can we see that okay?
You can see it perfectly. Well, I can see it.
No, it's not showing the whole. There we go. Okay. We're good. I'm going to minimize this a little bit. So there. Although I don't need to see the screen. I'm rambling now. So hi, everybody. What we're going to talk about today is how our brain can be sabotaging not just our career, our work, but also our health and our relationships. And I'm super passionate about this stuff if you haven't noticed yet. And just to kind of give you a brief understanding of what I want to do is give you a brief understanding of how our brains work. So I can help you be that, take stress out of the equation in your work and really get down to, working on the stuff that matters to you and not let the self-doubt or the procrastination or the fears get in your way. So back on there. There we go. So I won't go into all of this, I promised, but just so you know a little bit about me, I'm a neurosculpting facilitator. So I'm trained in this modality, and that happened here in Denver. And there's a bunch of books and stuff. You can find all the information on that on my website, or just by Googling. It's everywhere, and it's really exciting to see how it's growing. And I'm also a master nutrition therapist, which I bring into the neurosculpting a lot, because nutrition in our brains you can't manage stress without paying attention to your nutrition. You can have the best diet in the world, but if you don't manage that stress response in our brain, you're still never going to live up to your full potential. And the inverse is true as well. You can have the best meditation and stress management practice in the world, but if you're not feeding the brain the nutrients that it needs, it's still not going to have access to that higher brain, that fuller potential. So those are things that I get really nerdy about and are really fun to talk about. So my little bit about my background, I worked on Wall Street for over 20 years, and I thought I knew stress inside and out. I thought I knew all these sabotaging things easily, and I knew nothing until life hit me with some really big traumatic things. I own an old church, which I renovated, which is kind of wild and crazy adventure and a whole experience in self-sabotaging in itself. I could tell that story someday too, but not today. Yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell, and let's get into it. So our brains, what I want to do in this presentation is talk to you about easy stress management tools, simple brain science to see how these things are working. Because I feel like when I know self-doubt is coming up, then I can better deal with it. I don't want to necessarily get rid of it because, or get rid of that part of my brain that's bringing it up, because it's there to protect us. And then the other part of this is, like I mentioned, we're gaining so much more access when we're able to calm that stress response down to that other part of our brain. And that's where our brilliance comes in. That's where our potential comes in. And there are some really fun little hacks that we can do to get there. So we can kind of reverse engineer it too. Like, what? Self-doubt's showing up, but I'm just going to be curious about it. So I'm doubting myself. Well, that's interesting. What else can I, I'm just going to move on and do something weird and wacky anyway. And it can kind of override it. It can override that feeling. So that's fun. So is everybody ready? Anybody ready? I'm going to have Vala just watch the chat. If there's any questions, just let me know and stop me, because I'm happy to answer them as we go along.
I'm watching the chat.
Okay, cool. So our language of the brain, there's these two parts, two very important parts. One is that I'll just call it our lizard brain, but it's technically called the limbic brain, and that's where the hippocampus and the amygdala and the hypothalamus all work together to keep us safe. And it's called the lizard brain because it's the one part of the brain that, so our brains develop as we age, as we grow and mature. They develop from infancy up to adulthood. And this part of the brain is ready to go from the moment we're born. So it's there, it's ready. It's a super multifaceted, multi-processor protector brain. So it's paying attention to everything to keep us alive. Like that's its primary function. So we don't want to stop it. We just want to be able to understand it so that we can calm it down when we're just perceiving a threat, because it does not know the difference between a perceived threat and an actual threat. So say the bills that came in the mail or that email or that text from that person shows up, and we get like a physical response in our body. We get contracted or, oh no, I can tell you, especially this past week, I've gone through this up and down like a roller coaster, and it's a physical response in your body. So being able to understand that that's what's happening and just calm it down, and then we're not going to have that physical response, which the bad part of that is over time it can become a default. And that's where chronic illness and chronic stress shows up in our body and our health, and we don't want that. So we want to be able to calm it down. And the other part of that is it easily puts that higher part of our brain on the back burner. So there's a very specific language that this brain speaks. It's very easy, and we'll learn it all here today. So you can use it going forward. And I'm very happy to be able to teach it because it will help a lot. So I want to do a little exercise, and I know we're not interactive, so Vala, you can jump in for this part. What are some adjectives of you or someone you know at their absolute worst?
Now is a good time to put it in the comments. So what are some adjectives of you at your or someone
you know? Yeah, or someone you know. Yeah. I'll list some out too, that some very common ones of clients I work with are, or myself. I mean, I'm sure we can all relate to some of these: cranky, short-tempered, judgmental. It's hard to process things. We get overwhelmed, exhausted, limited,
I'm watching the chat, so I'm not seeing anything. But yeah, I mean, this definitely is something that I've experienced when I'm grouchy.
Yeah, grouchy. That's a good
You know,
one. I mean,
oh
basically,
yeah,
this is a
definitely get
really,
grouchy, and I just need my space.
yeah, yeah, and we're very short-tempered too in those moments. So basically,
Right.
this is like a really crappy dating profile for me, right? I should not use this one. So this is us at our worst, and this is what's happening when our limbic center, that lizard brain, is taking over. We're tired, we're irritable, we're antisocial. It's also, like I joke about a dating site, but it's really bad resume list. So you don't want to put this out to your clients like, this is how I am, so come work with me, right? So let's do the opposite now. What are some adjectives of you at your best?
Well, we get happy, we get I'm searching for words because now I can only think of Icelandic words. So yeah,
Brain.
so we have here also too sensitive for the
Yeah, that's a good one too. Very like overly sensitive.
yeah.
Yeah. And
We're more patient
yes,
and we tolerate more.
more generous, energetic, creative,
Helpful.
helpful. That's a really good one too. Yeah. So this is our other part of the brain. So there's that lizard part of the brain, and then there's that higher human part of the brain. And the higher human part of the brain is where all these adjectives come into play. So when you see them side by side and you start to notice yourself tipping into that, that humanity at its worst part, that bad resume list, it can be a way to kind of anchor yourself like, okay, wait, I'm more on this list than I am on this list. I want to be on this humanity at its best list. So you can use that as just a little cue to help yourself along. When I get into self-doubt and, I'm a little more short-tempered and, my nervous system is a little more reactive, that the too sensitive, overly sensitive, then I know that I need to do some work to calm that limbic center down. Because this is the list I want to be on. I mean, I don't know about you, Vala, but this is where I want to be, like, as much as possible. Loving,
Absolutely.
forgiving, big picture thinking, forward thinking. Like, this is all part of it's called the prefrontal cortex. So it's the fore part of our brain. And
this is probably more how people are before stress gets introduced, because I remember when I was way more like that. Pre-kids, pre-house payments, all the stress things that are in our bodies or in our lives. So yeah, absolutely. I can 100% relate. And Ingrid said sincere. So I think this is just wonderful. This is very fitting.
Yeah, and it's important to, I think, notice the difference too, that they're not made out of air. Like, this isn't just something that happens without a reason or a cause. Like, this is a reaction to what's going on around us and our sense of safety or our sense of certainty or status even, or there's a whole, that's a whole nother class too, where these things, how we can get triggered. But they're, understanding that they're not made up, that that's part of our brain that's there to protect us, is pulling these up for a reason. So looking at what that reason is, what is that stress, getting down to it, and then calming it down, like realizing, okay, so I just need some time to myself. Like, I need some self-care, or I need some sleep, or I need to, down-regulate this and to be able to access more of this list. So these two parts of the brain, as I've kind of alluded to, they have an inverse relationship to one another, like a seesaw. Do they even have seesaws anymore? I thought they took them out of kids' playgrounds.
Kind of half-ass seesaws.
Yeah.
Not the fun ones where you went flying off like I
Yep, that was me. I have a scar on my forehead from one even. Yeah. But they're, so, I think we still all know what they are. They kind of going, and that's what happens in our brains. So when that lizard brain is activated, the human brain, that higher brain, is deactivated. And that's important to know, because then we can kind of, start hacking the system. And I'm going to go over 3 examples today. One is relationships, which gets into negative thinking. And that may sound like a really, okay, well, that's kind of a lame topic, but it's much more relevant than it appears to be. And then in career, like that fear of failure, where self-doubt comes up. And health, these are three of the big ones that I see with clients of mine, is insomnia, not being able to sleep and having trouble sleeping. And next to nutrition, or I would even say before nutrition, sleep is the most important thing we can do for ourselves, for our brains, for our health, for our relationships, our career, our family, everything. So, dear lizard brain, what do you need? What do you need, dear lizard brain? Our lizard brain needs predictability. It needs a sense of safety more than anything else. So what does safety mean? That means basic needs. So I have access to food and water. I have a roof over my head. I have shelter. I'm safe. Like my body is safe right now. And my environment is predictable. So what are things that are predictable? Like the most basic thing is your breath. And just even taking a moment to focus on your breath and notice that, wait, okay, it's breathing with or without my attention. I've got this. Like my needs are met. So that helps calm that lizard brain down, helps get you out of that stress place and sleep. So those are the basic needs. So the first topic on negative thinking, or that negative outlook or mindset, this is, if you think of like what is leading to a negative outlook or mindset, we all know how this feels like, what this feels like. It looks something like spilled coffee and suddenly the whole day is ruined, or that negative Nelly at work, that one person that just, you're not going to bring your good news to that one person because they're going to shoot down every, they're going to kill your joy. They're like, well, you may think that's good, but da 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 da. And then just kind of, it sucks. And it throws you out of that happy place and into almost a stressed and worried mindset. Like, wait, is this really going to happen? So what is going on here is our lizard brain is trying to protect us. It's looking for all the possible bad outcomes to keep us safe. So when you start on that downward spiral of, okay, I spilled my coffee, so I'm sure I'm going to get stuck in traffic, and this client meeting is going to go bad, and it just starts to spiral out of control into this negative thinking. So our brain is trying to be predictable again and predict anything bad that can happen to protect us, because it doesn't know the difference between a perceived threat, traffic, spilled coffee, bad outcome with a client or whatever it could be, and an actual real threat, mountain lion attacking us, boulder falling on our head. These are two very big different threats, and it's going to react the same in our body to protect us. So it's going to divert all of our resources from our midline. It's going to throw us out of our parasympathetic nervous system. So it's going to throw us out of rest and digest. So we may get upset stomach. My shoulders like to become my earrings when I'm like that. And, or clenched jaw, or, like you find yourself, holding your fists or your steering wheel like this, because all of those, the blood, the glucose, the oxygen are going out to our bodies, out to our extremities, to our muscles and then there's a whole hormonal cascade with adrenaline and cortisol to help us run or fight this threat, but it's just traffic. So
we can kind of translate that also for us as entrepreneurs, is if we're launching something and we're preparing for that big webinar and we get worried about the technology, nobody's going to buy, nobody's going to show up. What if it doesn't show?
What if?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect example. So if we're launching something new and we start down this negative path thinking of the systems are going to fail, no one's going to show up, you can flip that around too. Just a side note to, I'm going to try this new thing out. Like, get curious about it. I'm going to try this new thing out. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to see who shows up. I'm going to give it my best, because that's, if nothing else, it's great practice and it could be fun. Someone may show up. I may actually talk to somebody. I might change a life today. Who knows? Maybe something I say triggers something incredible and beautiful for somebody today.
I may help one person.
I may help one person.
Mm-hmm.
I may help myself, which is probably even better than helping one person, because if I'm helping myself, then I'm able to help even more people. Mm-hmm. So I love that example. Thank you. So how do we fix this, aside from those few examples? I am the queen of tangents. So we calm it down. We talk to that lizard brain again, and we understand that we go to those things that are predictable: our breath, orient to safety, I have shelter, access to basic needs. And notice, like I just did in that example, notice that you're in this negative spiral. Notice that you're having one negative thought after another. Awareness is probably 90% of the battle in this. 90% of making these changes and adjusting that shift in your brain is being aware of it. So when you notice yourself stuck in those negative thoughts, just turn toward it and say, oh, wait, okay, I'm doing this again. How can I flip this? What wild and crazy positive thought can I bring into this? Because what that's doing is it's shifting that seesaw again, the want, into our creative, higher human brain. And when we can get more into our creative brain, our lizard brain starts to take a little break. And the gods know that lizard brain needs a break. So give it a break. Get creative. Get wild and wacky. Maybe the technology will actually work in your favor and do something that you didn't even know it could do. Maybe it'll record an extra copy and save it to a place that you don't even have to go look for it. We don't know. Like that's the thing about uncertainty is we may feel contracted and fearful around it, but the other side of uncertainty is unlimited potential, unlimited possibilities. And so that's one.
That first step.
Taking that first step. Yeah. We don't know it's around that corner. And that's one of the brilliant things about being an entrepreneur. And one of the many reasons that many of us do this is because we have the ability to change our business on a dime. We can take it into a new direction whenever we want. It's ours. And the potential for us to create is unlimited. The potential for us to give is unlimited. And the possibilities of what we have are unlimited. So that's the beautiful part of uncertainty. Fear of failure. So on a very basic level, what's going on here is, and again, this is the very basic language. The brain doesn't like change. It doesn't like something new because, again, it likes predictability. So anytime we amp up our goals, we amp up our ambitions, we can get stuck into the minutia of the details so easily, like spending a week trying to figure out a font or, technology, or, okay, I'm just going to work on my website because I'm too scared to go out and find speaking gigs because that's too scary.
Everything else except what matters in your business.
Yeah.
I get a funny story about this from my daughter. My daughters are interesting, to say the least.
Yes, they are. I
was watching a show, Tiny Houses. I can't remember the name of it, but they involve tiny houses, like 150 square feet to 300 square feet. 300 square feet was big houses in that show. And I was admiring it, and I was saying, oh my gosh, look at just how simple this would be. And because one of my triggers is clutter. I cannot stand clutter. And if you have kids, they come with a lot of clutter. And
they're like clutter magnets.
Yeah. And my daughter starts freaking out because she thought we were moving into a tiny house. So she does not do well with change, and as most of us do, she doesn't like change. She has made us promise that this is our forever home. And that change is incredibly scary. Just
it is.
Children and up, and the same thing in our business. Change is scary. What if all of a sudden I get a lot of clients? How am I going to handle it? Am I going to be too stressed? Or am I going to be too happy? Am I going to be too busy and not know what to do?
Or am I going to fail?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's huge. And it's all about that limbic, that lizard brain saying, I need things to stay the same. If we take a different route, a mountain lion will attack us and we'll be dead. That's what our brain thinks changes. It doesn't think a new project at work. It doesn't think a speaking gig. It doesn't think, going out and asking and looking for new clients. It doesn't think trying this new big, huge venture. All it thinks is a mountain lion's going to attack us.
Yeah.
So let's do whatever it takes. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep my person safe. So fear, self-doubt, all the old stories of I'm not good enough, or I'm too much, I'm too little, too small, too big, too short, too fat, too tall, too skinny, too much hair, not enough hair, too purple, too orange, like our brain will come up with anything it can do to keep us in the status quo. It does not want change. And that's what the fear of failure, where that's coming from, is that fear of change, any sort of change. And interesting, you brought up your daughter too, because so I mentioned that lizard brain is ready to go as soon as we're born. The higher, that prefrontal cortex, our human brain, it takes a long time to develop. It doesn't develop in girls, fully develop and mature until their early 20s. Wow. And for boys, it takes a little longer, their mid to late 20s to fully mature. And that part of the brain is a diva. It needs good sleep. It needs good pristine nutrition. It needs lots of rest. It's an energy hog. It uses, so the brain uses about 25% of our body's resources, blood glucose. And the human brain, that higher part of our brain, uses about 25% of those resources. Wow. So that's the other thing too. Like our limbic center, our lizard brain, can live off of nothing. Crappy food, no sleep. It's always ready there. It's always ready to protect us. Whereas the other part of our brain, we have to give it good sleep. That's why sleep is so, so, so important. And, calming down that limbic center so that we have more access to that is really important. So what can we do? How do we navigate out of this fear of failure, out of this fear of change? I like to think it because it's there to protect us. And that's a good thing. Like, I want my brain looking out, watch my back, literally. And we, again, orient to safety. So take a deep, long, slow breath. And the other thing about breathing, exhaling slowly, like really lengthening that exhale, is it triggers the nervous system. There's the whole vagus nerve system that goes on. I won't bore you with that today, or geek out on it. And when it notices that we're breathing slower, it's like, oh, we must be safe. So it's kind of a way to hack our brain to think we're safe and feel that safety. So, and then the other thing is, again, I'm going to keep repeating this, like flip that seesaw, start getting curious and thinking up something novel. Like, how much bigger would your world be if you did succeed or if you did try? So if I don't do anything, I'm going to stay exactly the same. My life will be exactly the same. I won't have tried this new thing. But if I do try it, even if I fail, I tried it. And what if it's, instead of like the stumbling blocks that I run into, like, so I do have a technology problem. Say we have one in the next 5 minutes, hopefully not. But think of it as a puzzle instead of a problem, because that gets the brain thinking that this is something interesting. Like a puzzle, that's way more fun than a problem. Problems, that sounds scary and like something that could hurt me. Puzzles, however, that's a game, and games are fun. I like games. I really like games. So flip it on its head and think of something interesting and curious that could come out of this fear of failure. Out of even if you just fall down the failure rabbit hole and you think of all the ways you could fail, think of all the things you could learn from that. Like, is failure really a bad thing? Like, I don't think so. I think failure just helps us grow further. It's like, oh, well, okay, that was just a growing pain. On to the next thing. Keep trying. Does that make sense?
Failure is the biggest lesson that we can have. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people stop. They fail, they stop, and that's it, because it's so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And it's scary. I mean, and we stay in that scared place. And just know that scared place is just your brain trying to protect you. That's it. It just wants to keep you safe, keep you alive. So if whatever you're trying is not a life-threatening thing, just keep working through it. Just keep doing it. This is life. Like, this is how it works. We fail, we stumble, we fall, we get back up, we keep walking. Like, how would you wouldn't be walking now if you didn't fail.
Well, you know what? That's such a great point. If it isn't life-threatening, just do it.
Some people do it anyway if it's life-threatening, but that's another story.
Video, go live or do a video.
Yeah.
It's not life-threatening. The world is not going to end.
It isn't.
Going to happen.
I've noticed most of the Yeah, most of the live, the first, even still, like a lot of the live videos, nobody's watching. Like, and if they do, I'm like, whatever. That's me. It's just, it's more authentic. It's you.
That is true.
Yeah, and you are a brilliant, wonderful creature. So the world needs more of us. Not sleeping at night. This is a huge one. Huge, 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 huge. So why aren't we I mean, there's a number of medical reasons, but I won't address those today. I'll address the standard typical reasons we're not sleeping at night. And typically it's worry and anxiety. And what's happening there is that lizard brain. So it's keeping you in a state of a constant arousal, constant vigil. Like if you ever go and stay at sleep in a new place, like usually the first night it's hard to get any sleep because you're kind of tossing and turning. That's because your brain, it's in a new place. So it doesn't have the consistent, predictable noises of your home. So it's constantly on alert, on watch. It's going to stay completely vigilant to keep us safe again, and doesn't know the difference between, well, it's still a luxury hotel, I'm totally safe here, and you're home. Like, and the fact that you're not being attacked. What is that?
It's not familiar because we don't like change. Is that what it comes back to?
Yes. Yeah. It's something different. So there's not the predictability that it had before. So and then the change would be like the new sounds, the new noises, or, atmosphere, if you're in some place that's humid and usually you're not, or, whatever all those different changes are, it doesn't have that same predictability. So it's going to stay in high alert in order to keep us safe. And when we have that, those negative thoughts churning, they're going to keep us awake because the brain thinks we're under attack. It doesn't realize we're just worried about, our kids' future, about, the clients next week, about technology, about, how our business is doing or not doing, and all the things we shouldn't be doing for it. And a mountain lion attacking us. It thinks that's the same thing. So it's going to keep us awake. It's going to keep us in a state of arousal because it thinks a mountain lion is attacking us, even though it's just those things. Like, it's just stuff we're perceiving that might or might not happen. There's a lot of fixes here that we can do to help get a good night's sleep. Sleep hygiene for one, but as far as talking to our brain, this is one of the best times we can use to meditate, and use a neurosculpting meditation, especially because there's one that just goes into there, talks to that limbic center, talks to the prefrontal cortex, and then gets both hemispheres. I mean, talk about full on brain activity, but it's doing it very specifically to dump all the stress out, like just calm that limbic center down, orient to our basic needs. The business is fine tonight. Can take care of all these things tomorrow. I can brainstorm on new ideas. I can test technology. I can do all of that tomorrow. Like, this is not something I need to think about or worry about tonight. Right now, my basic needs are taken care of. I can, I've got covers, just think of even like the way gravity is supporting you as well as your breath. Like, those are very predictable things. And another activity or exercise that I really like to do is shake. And I'm talking like, full body, if you can get on the floor or lay on your bed and just like shake all of your limbs, because what that's doing is there's a physical response in our body when we're stressed, a chemical response, and it helps move it out of our body so it doesn't stay in there, so our muscles don't stay contracted, ready for action, so that we can melt back into our sleep space. We can let their muscles relax around our bones and not have that contraction, and let our minds rest. So shaking is a super, super valuable tool. It's one I use all the time. And, even if like when I was in corporate, you could go and like, I tell my corporate clients this too, just go into the bathroom and shake where no one can see you. You can just get out of your system, do a good 30 seconds or so. And you'll find that it's much easier to focus after doing that. And it's much easier to breathe, like shoulders can drop down a little bit, and you have that predictability again of your breath. And it also helps break thought patterns. So if you get, go ahead.
I read somewhere for people with anxiety that they go for when they feel the anxiety start kicking in, they go for a short walk.
Mhm.
because it's tricking the brain into that you're running away, you're taking action, you're
Yeah, that's
moving
a good one
away
too.
from the mountain lion. Is that kind of what shake does, and what the same thing does? Is that it kind of?
Yeah, that's very, very much related. You could even do like, dancing, like just do some
Right.
crazy non-form dance. But the point is, I mean, shaking is good because it's very intense and localized. So it's going to work fast, but also going for a walk, going for a run, exercising, dancing, some sort of body movement, moving away, are all going to be effective as well. So that physical movement to get the chemicals out of, to move the chemicals out of the body, and also to break that thought pattern. Because, I used to get these horrible, horrible nightmares when I had this big family tragedy happen. And that was one of the first tools that somebody gave me that worked immediately, because it would break the thought pattern of those nightmares, because I'd get stuck in the nightmares and then I'd wake up and I would keep reliving it. I would keep going through, oh my God, I can't believe I had that nightmare. That was horrible. This happened and that happened. And oh my God, I had that nightmare. This is horrible. This happened and that happened. And I'd bring it into the day. And the thing about the way our memory centers work is whenever we bring up a thought, we relive it as though our bodies think we're reliving it in the present moment. So a positive way that this works out is, say, I know for a lot of people, like the smell of fresh cut grass,
Mm-hmm.
or baking bread or baking pie, or, those aromas around, pleasant times and moods. Like our bodies physically react to those memories. And that's just side note, that's the amygdala attached to the hippocampus that are, doing all of this for us. But the inverse is responsible or works as not as well, but also it's the same action. So when we bring up that, like me in that nightmare, my body is having a contraction every single time I bring up that thought. And the same is with, like, that's kind of how PTSD works too. Like they believe they're living that moment again. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So yeah, breaking those thought patterns, doing something physical to get it out of the body. And then a meditation is going to help a lot too, to really down regulate that stress and calm that limbic center down. And these are just, they're basic tools. This is something you can do every day. You can do it throughout the day. If you know you have something that you're going to perceive as stressful coming up, use these tools. Use them beforehand. Use them before you do your first live video, or before you try some new technology, before you meet with that new client.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, and it can really help calm you down and center you, so that when you meet with that new client, when you start that new video, you're not in a place of like, just go. And instead you're like, hi, I am here with you right now. Let's talk. Let's do what we need to do. And you're fully present. You're ready to go. So how do you get to Carnegie Hall? This is I don't know if it's a bad dad joke or not, but I've been telling this one forever. Practice, 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 practice. Knowing these tools is not enough. The way our neurology works is, I have an example here, but one of my other favorite examples is, well, okay, I'll keep it simple, Mariah. Keep it simple. Work at this one. You're in a helicopter, you're flying over the woods, and you see your most ideal place, your most perfect life, if you will. The spot is perfect, the temperature, the climate, the trees, the water, whatever it is for you that is like your ideal life. You see this spot in the woods, and you're in a helicopter, and you can see, okay, I need to go from here to get there. So now you're back in front of the woods, down on the ground. You can visualize it. You know where it is. The first time you go into the woods, you're not going to see that. You might see a footprint. You might not, from where you were before. But the more you go over that, the more that footprint is going to turn into a little footpath. And then it's going to turn into a bigger trail. And then it's going to turn into a road and a superhighway eventually, the more you practice at it. And this is how it works in our neurology. We have all this gray matter, which is made up of our neurons, our brain cells. And the more we work those messages and those pathways, the stronger they're going to get. So the more you practice with these tools and calm your limbic center down, the more it's going to, that lizard brain is going to be like, oh, she's telling me to calm down again. Things must be okay. Got it. And that will become your default instead of contraction, stress, freaking out. So that's just a little bit of how it works in our neurology. The other part of that is fear immediately creates a superhighway. So that's it's really important to practice these tools over and over again as much as possible so that they become your default and you can bypass that superhighway. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
So just kind of to review, what we're doing is we're rewiring a default setting to reinforce that path through the forest, to reinforce that instead of going immediately always to stress, we can stop it and we can get used to stopping it and turn to curiosity, turn to novelty, turn to that puzzle instead of that problem. And wait, oh, there I was going again down that fear way. I am going to back up and look for something interesting, curious, even if it's something weird, like saying to yourself, you know what, maybe in the next 10 minutes, a parade of miniature pink elephants is going to come through my room right now. Like anything, just tip those scales, tip that seesaw, get it working for you instead of against you. And speaking this language of the brain, the thoughts, the language is understanding that predictability, our breath, gravity, basic needs are going to help orient it to safety. Consistency is key. The more you do this and the more consistently you do this, the easier it gets. They're easy tools, but it takes practice. And the more practice, the easier you see how that works. It keeps going around in a circle. That benefits you. And the other thing I really think is very, very important is community and connection, creating connection with others, because we're social creatures. So the more connection we have and community and people we have that we can go and be like, I'm freaking out right now. I just need to freak out for a minute. And then our friends are like, or your family or whoever that community is for you can just kind of be like, yeah, you're freaking out. It's fine. You're safe. Everything's going to be fine. You're like, right. Okay. Thanks. Just need to freak out. Got it out of my system. Moving forward now. So community is super, super important. So any questions?
Yeah, let's get to some questions because there's a delay between our video and what's actually there. So I'm going to scroll through and just see some comments that we've had. Susan says he's open to it and she's willing to try anything. And I think most of us are, because this is just a very real thing for our lives. She's No More says, I sometimes feel it. So her brain wants to shut down when I'm too stressed.
That's totally normal.
That.
So there's fight, there's flight, and freeze. And that's very much a freeze response where I just can't even, the deer in the headlights sort of response. Another reaction, another example of that freeze response is fainting even, where this nervous system is just overwhelmed, so it shuts down.
Wow.
Totally normal. It's, yeah, totally normal as all the other reactions are. And you can use the same tools.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, let us know in the comments if you have questions, and we'll go through them. And if you're watching the replay, you can put a question inside the group, and I'm sure Mariah will be around for a day or two to answer. Susan asked, what about fear of success?
Fear of success, exactly the same. Because there's fear of success and fear and failure kind of go hand in hand. It's still that lizard part of the brain that is worried about something changing. And successes change, and there's a whole bunch of other changes that come along with that. Like, what if I'm successful and I make so much money, and my money story is that people with money are mean? So what if I'm successful and I turn into a mean person? Or what if I'm successful and my family doesn't like me anymore? What if I'm successful and fill in the blank? So the way to flip that is, what if you're successful and you have better relationships, you have more resources to help people, you have more access to create more for your clients, you have more time to be with people that you love, you have more abundance, and more to share with the world. So it's flipping that scale again.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And it's a totally normal fear. Like it's one of the fear of failure and success. They're kind of hand in hand. That's very frequently seen.
I can't remember who it was, but one of my mentors asked, how do you feel when you think about you being successful? And that feeling comes either you start to feel that stress, or do you start to feel relaxed? But yeah, it was really interesting exercise. And then we have Shus No More asked, so what was scared of doing it alone?
What was the question?
Scared of doing it alone. Maybe you can clarify a little bit, Shus. What do you mean by that question?
Because I know I've my businesses I've done alone, and not having like a business partner or a even a spouse, and just being in it all on my own and being accountable for it is very scary. But it's also, I'm not, I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to worry about, if I fail, then this is the same if I fail in any situation though, I just step back, readjust, recalculate, recalibrate, move forward. And there's also a huge sense of pride in doing it all on my own too. So that's another way to kind of tip those scales.
That's true. And, it's just us to blame, I guess, when it's just us. You can't blame your corporate part or your partner. You can't blame your corporate or your boss or whoever, like, oh, they're just a bad boss. So, that's why I failed. I didn't get enough training. I didn't get enough support. So it's
definitely a lot of soul searching and self growth. I found the more I put into my own personal growth, my self growth and development, the better my business does. Because part of that is understanding, and that's kind of how I got into this company and this business too, into neurosculpting, was just working through my own fears, working through my own trauma and healing. And the more I healed, the more life just got more exciting and interesting. And, my businesses started doing better. I got more creative. So it's all about shifting that balance in the brain. Because remember that slide, I'll go back to it here. When we shift that balance, we are here. We're engaged, we're charismatic, we're joyful, we're present, we're spontaneous, we're dynamic, we're big picture thinking, we're puzzle solvers.
This is when we make our big steps in our business. We decide to
create
that $10,000 offer, or we decide to take that big step, or even if you're at the beginning of your business, put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Something as just little as, hey, this is my business. Spread the word.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. And you're accessing your potential. You're accessing that potential which I have always felt my entire life until I finally took the step and became an entrepreneur, was there's something more out there for me. I know I have so much more to give than I can in this corporate job. And it nagged at me. Like it was kind of like this burning, nagging frustration, dark cloud thing of, am I ever going to live up to my potential? And when you take that first step, even if that first step, is not your full potential, it's a first step toward it. And shifting that balance in the brain, getting away from that fear and just diving into this place of faith and, forgiveness of forgiveness of failure, and being able to create all of this going forward. It's really expansive instead of that contractive space. And we have control to shift that balance every single day, every breath. You can remind yourself that you can live in this space instead of this space.
That's right.
That we can be, like when you start to feel grumpy and judgmental is a big one for me. When I get judgmental, I know I need to stop and back up and reassess what's going on, because something is bothering me. I'm triggered by something.
Yeah. So it may not necessarily be what you're being judgmental about, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. It could just, your judgment could be throwing a stone at whatever it hits. And it just, whenever I just start getting judgmental about anything around me, because usually whatever I'm judgmental about, it's pretty petty.
Yeah. Look at
It's
what
pretty
I
petty.
wrote.
And often it's a reflection of something I'm afraid of.
Makes sense. Well, Mariah, this has been absolutely wonderful. We're getting comments here, just superb reply. I feel motivated and free now, so thank you. You're getting really great responses here. I want to mention in the comments, so Mariah created a quiz. In the comments, there's a link to the quiz, and I can actually hop on over to, well, we'll do that afterwards. So it's bit.ly and what is it? /RB stress quiz. And you can take the quiz and see what state your brain is in. So yeah, bit.ly RB, all lowercase, stress quiz. So go ahead in the comments, there's a link to it, take the quiz, see what state of mind you're in. And if you want to contact Mariah, definitely do that. She does wonderful work to help us manage our stress.
Thanks so much, Vala. It's been really fun. Thanks for having me here.
This has been absolutely wonderful. And
if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out.
I don't see any more questions at this point. If you are watching the replay, or if you think of any more questions later today, put them in the comments. Just create a specific post for it, and Mariah will be around to answer. Yeah. I didn't even ask you before. I just assumed you are.
I am, yes. Happy to answer questions. I love these questions. Bring them on. Yeah, it's great.
But this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys later. Bye.